First of all, I have to say that the Mercedes W13 isn't only painful to look at, it's also painful to watch it drive, because that really looks like a handful. And I really was feeling for Lewis Hamilton during the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. But I also cannot help but touch the irony that this brand is world famous for its smooth drives, for its so-called magic carpet ride. So let's dive into it. Is it that bad, and will the FIA help Mercedes? You've got the 7-time world champion and a new 24-year-old guy in one team, and the latter is undeniably the fastest this year. In qualifying, Hamilton was beaten 3-5, in races it's 1-7, and the points difference in the World Championship is 37 points at the moment. What's more, the 7-time world champion is showing serious signs of fatigue. From his question to the pits to retire the car in Spain to the latest remarkable show of public suffering in Baku. Compare that to the fresh and clearly more systematic approach of Russell, who was more consistent, motivated and successful. Now that makes you wonder, if you're an engineer, on which side of the garage would you rather work? And from a strategic point of view, who would you listen more carefully to when thinking 1 or 2 years ahead? Now I believe we are seeing a power shift within this team. And believe me, as soon as Russell feels this as well, he will take his chance. He will not be a Bottas 2.0 or a new Bottas. Now I think it's fair to say that Mercedes has a real big problem with their car, and everyone is quizzed by it. No one saw this coming, and even after the first few races everyone thought, well, they will fix this within about 5 races. But last weekend in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, the 8th of the year, the car was worse than ever. The car was still bouncing violently and wasn't competitive at all compared to the frontrunners. Part of it is obviously down to the surface of the street circuit, but a larger part was down to the layout of the track. This circuit asks for downforce and high top speed, and that made life pretty difficult for a Mercedes team. Because to get a balance you need to understand your car, and that is definitely lacking here. Wolff has revealed that Hamilton has been experimenting with a few new parts, but nothing really worked. So in a remarkable sign of waving the white flag, Mercedes is now trying to put the pressure on the FIA to change the rules. This weekend, George Russell, who is also president of the Drivers' Association, said, "It's just a matter of time before we see a major incident, and a lot of us can barely keep the car in a straight line over these bumps." Apparently those proposals have not received majority support when raised in technical advisory committee meetings. As it is now mid-June, it requires at least 8 out of the 10 teams to vote in favor of a rule change to implement them. And it appeared Red Bull and at least one other team voted against them, and I can't help but think they did it with a little bit of vengeance. Given the ugly scenes we saw after last year's season finale, where we saw suddenly high-paid lawyers coming out of the Mercedes high hat. But there's also a legitimate reason not to change rules mid-season. First of all, it costs them a lot of money. And second of all, everyone started with exactly the same rules, and some guys just did it better than others. This is the nature of this sport. Now, George Russell said that driving his car was very dangerous because of the bouncing. Now maybe tell that to your team. Change the ride height, not the rules. But that's just my opinion, and the pressure seems to work because FIA announced it will investigate the bouncing. So let's see what happens next. Now we saw a very fine drive by the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton last weekend, but that wasn't on his mind when he got out of the car. While his former rivals were celebrating their win, he took his time to get out of the car. Now how much of this was real and how much was just showmanship, I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. What matters is he still motivated enough to get into that car and make the best out of it. And will he find that motivation back before the next race, a couple of days away at the other side of the world? The Canada surface is a bit bumpy as well, but on the upside it will require a higher downforce setting, a bit the same like Spain, and Mercedes did particularly well there. Now, Mercedes boss Toto Wolff seemed to doubt directly after the last Grand Prix whether Hamilton would be fit to race in the next race. Wolff told Sky TV, "It goes pretty deep into the spine and that has consequences. The solution could be to have someone on the reserve list." Now, however much I would love to see Nick de Vries in that car just fight with George Russell, I don't think that's gonna happen. And I honestly don't think that the bruises Hamilton got from that Baku Grand Prix will be severe enough to keep him from running. And although I'm not his Angela, it's only educated guessing. But having seen the excellent state George Russell is in, I think all is fine. But more importantly, I think Mercedes at that point should be watching their future. They should be thinking about what's next. Hamilton costs about 90 million each year, and that money can solve a lot of issues in the long run. And it's up to Hamilton to decide whether he's part of the solution or the problem.